So now what we'll concentrate on is the main wings. So what we'll do, if we get our fringe, so the normal way I glue is the extra thin glue, push the parts together, touch, and then just a little brush along and let the capillary action do all the work. Now if you do have any little gaps like up here, if you give it a minute or two, as soon as the glue itself has eaten slightly into the plastic, it will push together like so and seal that gap up. Now the glue itself, the taking of the actual setting time is probably only a few seconds to get touchable, but obviously don't forget, being a weld, it's melting the plastic, making it soft, open to distortion quite easily, so it's best to let it go totally off for a good few hours before you start perhaps sanding joints and bits and pieces like that. But for speed and cleanness, I think really an extra thin glue, no matter whose particularly brand it is, it's well worth the time. Okay, just working around the back now. It's all a nice join. So just let the brush and the capillary action do all the work. I can see a time in the near future where you'll be actually be able to get aftermarket parts to drop the flaps on the black of the Lancaster. I know it's available in 148 and there is a few options for 172s at the moment, but I'm not sure how well it'll fit to this particular kit. So all we do, final bit just in here. It's actually a very nice fit, so I'm not too worried at the moment about it coming apart, but if I was, all I literally do, I use rubber bands. Don't do them too tight, double them over too many times, because you'll find it will bend the wing, but certainly just like that, leave it to one side, let it go dry, and then we can then sand off the leading edge and then rescribe the panel lines that go around the front. All too often, you know, perhaps you get your sanding stick, you sand along the front, you come along with your sanding sponge afterwards and sand down, and then you might forget to actually just to get the carry the panel line right the way round the front of the wing. And then obviously when people look at the front of the wing, you can see that it hasn't got a part there, so it looks quite odd. But that'll give you a taster for the wing section. Obviously it's straightforward for that. The tail goes together exactly the same. Okay, so we've let these windows all dry in. They're all nice. And in there, obviously we've got the centre fuselage and all the parts to go together now. So basically what we have is the top turret. We have the box section for the tail, has to go in. So what we'll do, we'll start on one side. If we have the port side of the fuselage, we'll put all the parts into that side. So we'll start with that one in there. We have the turret up top, in there like that. Then we'll put in the box section after that. So if we take some glue and we just put a drop down at the bottom, so usual thing, we'll let the capillary action. I'm not really worried about it because obviously we've got the other half is going to go on top and seal it together. So we'll put the main fuselage bits in, and in goes the cockpit. Okay, and we'll just put a little bit of glue down the back and let the capillary action go off and do all its work. And the same for the front. The beauty is with using the Tamiya glues, it literally is touch and go. You touch it down and off it goes. You know, obviously we've sprayed this black under here, don't worry about it too much because obviously we're going to redo all that anyway. So that all goes in there like that. Obviously the top turret isn't glued because that may have to manoeuvre around and everything. And then obviously we have our other fuselage half. Look at the tail is in. What we'll do, we'll start, obviously just getting it to sit, we'll start in here and we'll start gluing. So here we go, touch and go. Just down there. Obviously this one we'll do from the inside. We'll give it a little bit of a hole just for a second. And we'll work our way in sections going up. That way we can keep it all lined up, all nice and together. Now, as you see, we've a bit of time's gone on, next day so to speak. And what I've actually done is obviously we've taken the bands off and then we're just going to sand this seam. So using our pretty fine sanding stick, it's not too bad actually, just feeling it, there's not a lot there. But in some ways having the overspray from the inside, as you can see there, it gives you a nice little line to work with. So all we do, we just take that raised edge, perhaps where the glue has set, and we just gently sand it off. Now not pushing too hard, we don't want to be digging into the plastic and losing any detail or any panel lines or any bits and pieces. We're just taking any excess glue that perhaps has stuck up. So we just do this here. So as you can see, we're using our sanding sponge and we're just lightly sanding all the seams as we go. And then what we'll do is, in a moment, a little trick I use is using acrylic paint as a filler. So you can pop it down all your seam lines to see how they are, and if there's any little imperfections you can actually, am I causing an earthquake on the camera? Sorry. You can actually see where you are. So if you take a grey, something like just a medium grey, so it's not totally different from the plastic, I'll give that a shake, and then we just get any brush really, and then all we'll do is brush down all these seams like so, and that way we can check. It doesn't have to be neat or anything like that, but we can check our seam lines to see how they are at a glance, instead of perhaps having to prime and go down that route. So as you can see, we just run the bit of acrylic as we go. Just like so. And we'll let that dry, and then we'll give it a light sand, and then obviously if you can see the grey, we know there's going to be a gap. So we can either carry on sanding and take care of it. Then what we'll do is we'll rescribe the panel lines perhaps we're losing on the join, the same as what we're doing on the wing. So we do both sides. So we'll put that to one side for a moment. Okay, so next on the, the hit list is doing the engines. Now obviously on any multi-engine bomber they're always a bit of a problem getting the seams and the best ways to do it. Now with the kit it gives you two options. Well, it doesn't actually give you one option, to have the engine showing. Now obviously you don't have to do that. Originally I was going to do it, but looking around everybody's got them open, so I'm going to do them closed. So what we're going to do is show you the way it goes together. It's quite complicated and there is a few little tricky steps which the instructions don't show exactly brilliant. Now the fences that go inside the the wing itself, there is a top and bottom that can trip you up. There's a little tiny tab at the back here, and then basically that has to go to the rear. So it sits down in there, something like that, just in there, and then obviously we'll glue that in, we'll just do the old touch and go with the glue. Now we do the same on the other, so the tab goes to the rear, because if you put it in upside down or the wrong way round, you'll end up with one of the parts not fitting correctly. So it is just a little warning one there to make sure you get it in the right way. So that goes in there like that, and then just to help things settle, I'm using some tweezers, pull them apart a little bit, and we'll just sit them in there like that to hold it against the sides. So that will go like that, just in there, and that will do. We can put that to one side. Now obviously you don't have to build the entire of the engine section as well when you come in together. You've got this bulkhead which goes in, obviously half of it holds the engine out. Now there's a top and the bottom, there's a little locating tabs on the back of it, and they sit basically in like that. Now the thing is, obviously we just need the parts for obviously looking into the actual wheel well itself. So what we do, we have on there, if I just, is these parts here, these little V-shaped things, and they sit in just like that into it, and then one each side. So we just put a drop of glue on there, and one there. Okay, and then obviously this then goes into your well, and there's a little couple of tabs just down inside, and they'll sit on the inside there. Okay, and then you've got a little for the radiator bottom as well, which goes in. Now you could put that in now or afterwards, really it's your call. It sits in there like this. Now both occasions I've already built this, I've done one before and we put them in afterwards, but basically the two halves come together after that, so we're not worrying about building the engine. That sits like that. Touch of glue down that end, just around the front there, and then in the back all I do is do it from the inside, touch the glue, let it go down. Okay, same with the underside here, one there and one there. Okay, we'll let that set, and then all we'll do, the bit that goes underneath, making sure you've got it the right way round so the slit goes to the rear. Okay, that will sit in like this, so we'll put it in from the front, but I want to let that dry first just in case it spreads when we do it, just like that. Right, okay, so this one's dried a little bit now, so what we're going to do is fit this bit in. So obviously we want the slit at the bottom, so if you get your tweezers, hold the front of it and then push it into position and test it. So we're going to be happy that will work. Then get your glue and just run a little bit on those inside parts just in there, and a little bit on that back join, and then we catch it and we just hold a second. Okay, and whilst it's still there, we'll just give this back edge a tap of glue just in there a little bit more. Okay, then we just tap this front edge down just to go back a little bit. There we go, and then it clicks. We're happy with that back seam. You can touch it up and down as you like. So that one's in. Okay, then we've got the front, the radiator there. Let's have a quick test fit. And as we can see, there's a little gap there for some reason. So what we'll do, we'll have a quick look over. And there's no visible reason why it should. Check again. So what we're going to do is sand just a little bit off of that edge. Just taking a smidging out. Just a smidge more. When you're sanding like that for fitting, that's not bad. Okay, let's pop some in there and let the capillary action run all the way around. The same, when you're sanding like that, literally a couple of strokes and then check. And if you remember that and work your way around the entire part when you're doing it, really around the entire model, you'll find by test fitting you can certainly eliminate a lot of the problems with filling and sanding and various other bits and pieces like that. Now on that, we've still got to go the exhaust covers and the air scoops, and they'll go on there. So moving back onto the main part with the wing, what we've actually got is the back piece. So those two little tabs that we had on the back here, these just simply will push in to those little gaps and drop down. So we give that a drop of glue at the back and on the bottom, just like that. And okay, we've got another one at the front. Now this is where your engine mount would be, so that just slides in like that and marries up those two little areas each side and does the same thing. Just like that. Then all we've got then is two ribs that go down in the middle, which go in, which obviously I put a tiny drop of, let me just show you, I put, make a blob, like a little puddle of the glue, and there's a tab on the bottom, and all you do is sit that down in there, and that sits in. Then there's another one to go in there as well. So at the same time, what you'll have, those ones can dry. These are the ones I did earlier. Then obviously we've just got to rescribe the panel lines that curve around that we've eliminated. They're quite straightforward to do on this one. So all we do, we have our scribing guide here and our P cutter. So place the P cutter in the groove first, and there we go, it's done. Straightforward. Rescribe them all, and then we will be attaching them to the wing. Right, so now we've got to attach the wing parts on, sorry, the engines. Let's find the right ones here. Obviously there is a left and a right for the outer engine because of the way it cuts in. If we do the main one first, obviously we'll test fit to make sure how it goes. And that goes in. Now there's quite a nasty gap around the front here, hope you can see there. What we'll do is we'll roughly, once we've got it glued, we'll see how that looks before we start making, you know, drastic problems with it, perhaps which aren't there yet. So we sit it in. If it looks a good joint and there isn't too many gaps, obviously if you have got big huge gaps around, you know, it might be worth having it apart and start sanding and making your way around, but we're happy with that. So using a generous amount of glue, literally we just touch and float, and we'll let the welding action do all the work. Now if you do get quite a large join, then don't be afraid to put on 2 or 3 coats and quite a little bit. It will only go around that area. As long as you don't touch it, you'll be okay, and let it physically weld. Now, if you use something like a Revell contact glue, which is this one with the needle at the end, you can run that in as well. The only trouble with it is, because it's a thicker glue, you tend to get like a weld line. Great for armour, not very good on an aircraft. So that's the only trouble with that. To help this down, we're going to use a couple of quite soft clamps. Remember, once you've clamped, to give it a brush with the brush, because you'll get those little pooling bubbles of melted plastic tend to pop up, and at this early stage it's quite easy to get rid of those because of, you know, the way they are. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a go at this front one, and we're just going to plenty of Tamiya glue, and what we'll do, make sure there's no gaps. It's filled the entire join, you know, the actual glue is all the way and there isn't like a complete hole you can see through. We'll leave that to one side and see how it looks. Now if it looks terrible, we can always go back and fill and sand, whichever way we do it, with filler or with super glue, or perhaps we'll use even more glue to do it, or perhaps even a thicker glue. It gives you options, but it's best to leave that now to one side to work its magic and to see what happens before we worry about it too much. If we put the other one in basically exactly the same way, as you say, there is a left and a right for the outer engines. So we just brush this on. To be honest, the outside one here is a very nice fit. So that all goes on. And the front. That's it. Dogs have got hold of someone. Right. There we go. So we're going to leave that to one side now, as I say, just to work its magic, and we'll see what it looks like in a moment. Right, back onto here. The acrylic has now dried totally, so using a Corsis, well not Corsis, a Corsair sanding sponge, we give it a rub, and then we can see how it's looking. Now if you get some big grey lines left behind, then you know there's a filler job or some more sanding involved. If it just ends up nice and smooth, then we're okay. And there's a nice straight line, you can't feel anything, so I'm quite happy with that. And then obviously we'll just do the same on the other one here. I've already done the rest of the fuselage top and bottom, so I'm happy with all of those. Then all we have to do is rescribe those panel lines that we've obliterated. Remember, nice light, multiple scrapes, and try and keep the flow. Sometimes it might want to dig in to obviously the join. Try not to push in, just drag it nicely until it carves its way. We've rescribed the lot now. So our fuselage section is now complete. We've got the wing parts all drying. The tails are all done as well. And what we'll do is, because of obviously the difference in colour and saving masking, I think we'll put the tails and the wings on after we've painted. So all we've got to do now is put in these upper windows, and then we've got to mask up around the turrets and things like that. So I'll get started on the turrets, and then when you come back, I'll show you a little bit about masking the canopy, and then we're almost on for painting. Okay, as you can see, we've got the glass bits in the top and the bomb aim as well underneath. Now I was just assembling the main cockpit glass. I put in the side panels, and I just tried to test fit it, and it won't go on, nowhere near it in fact. And what I found is, inside the glass part here, for joining the side windows to the main frame, there's obviously little runners for it to run in. Now they clash with runners that are on the cockpit wall on the side. They're little lips so the window doesn't push all the way through. But if you take those out now, you'll find that the main canopy sits on top and it fits like a glove, but without it, it sticks too far up and it's not a very nice fit at all. You might have to take a little bit of sanding just to the leading edges or onto the cockpit just to make for a perfect snug fit. but I found it actually went in there very well. But if you leave those bits in, it doesn't go at all, and you end up with a particularly nasty one. Now when you're spraying painting even your cockpits, you've got two ways. You either mask each individual square, which is the quick way for spraying it, and then obviously you glue it all down and spray it in one. Now that is the way I normally do 99% of all models I do. I find it's quicker and you get a nicer seam from the glass work to the main body, the aircraft. Otherwise, if you put it on afterwards and there's a little gap, you've got to go round and fit it all in, and then it can go wrong. Now the other way of doing something with complex, small, tiny windows is that you leave it, put it on, mask the entire thing, all the glass, and then when you're spraying, you pick out each individual bar, if you like, and put a piece of tape down, spray it, take it off, next one on, spray it, and put each individual bar on. Now it sounds like a bit of a faffing job, but because we're using acrylics, the acrylics dry very, very quickly, and it doesn't take that long at all, and you have total control over each one you're doing. If you do make a mistake, because it's acrylic, you can just rub it off with your nail, and it will come off and you can start again. As I say, the other way of doing it, you spray it all over and then you scrape off each window and clean it off, which is something we're going to do down the fuselage windows. But it's not a particularly sharp way and a perfect way of doing it. You're okay for side windows, but certainly for a focal point, as the canopy is on a Lancaster, it probably needs to be a little bit sharper. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mask the canopy, the top one, and we'll spray it in one. But to show you, I'll do the front and rear turrets, I'll do them separate to show you what I mean, because it's quite an interesting point, and I know a lot of people have trouble with masking and getting a nice line. You know, obviously as all with kids we used to use a brush and do it, but to make them sharp, then you can't do that. And I know there is other ways of doing it. You could use decal, but you know, it's a lot of flapping around for what you're going to do. So I'll mask up the canopy. We'll bung up all these areas so no paint can get in, and in the fuselage here as well, and then we're going to paint. So to start with, we'll leave off the glass work on the back and off the turrets basically, but I'll mask up this front one. Okay, as you can see, we've moved on a little bit now. Canopy is on and masked, put down with PVA. We've just got the tail planes going on here. Now at the moment I haven't fixed the wings, they're just placed on, nor am I going to do the tail planes, because obviously when we come to do the black, it's easier to remove it than it is to have to go around and mask it. Now what the plan of action is, we're going to paint the top half of the wings first, and then they can be masked up, because obviously it's just a little bit on the nauticals here and at the top, and then we can just do all the black, everything that's black. Obviously it's quite a lot on the Lancaster. The tails are going to be black as well. Obviously we've got the bomb bay and the bomb doors and everything else, so it's easier to do the black afterwards than it is to do it first, because obviously just for the masking ease we've just got to run a strip down here. The wings will be separate anyway, and then it'll be a case of the black and then dry brushing and moving on. So okay, I've primed this. Literally I've just used a bit of XF20. I've seen I've got lots of it left around, which is the medium grey, and used it as a primer. Now it's literally just had a light coat all over the entire thing. Now remember, priming an aircraft isn't so much just checking, you know, it's got a nice surface for the paint to go on. It's also your last chance to see if there's anything that needs any attention. So you want to look along all those seam lines and joins to make sure they're all okay. Now if you're building pretty quick and working your way through and using the weld, one thing you have to look out for is what we call sink marks. Now these are little things I've had trouble with in the past, where I've built a plane quite quickly within a few days, and then it's sat in paint, and then before you know it, you've got horrible grooves in it and things like that. So then it's had to go back in and have touch-ups, and this is where literally it starts to sink and melt and then pulls in, and before it all goes hard. So as we can see, we've done all this. You can have a look around the canopy, make sure you're going to see exactly how that fits. Now what this really does is just eliminate all those things that you'll see afterwards. If it looks bad here, it'll look bad further on. Here, if you've got a chance to put it right with no problem at all. Obviously if you try and make it look right once it's got paint all on it, then you've got to then go around and touching in, perhaps respraying whole areas and through that.